All right, welcome everybody. Hopefully you can hear me and you'll be able to hear Darren in a quick second as well. My name is Samantha and I'm the Director of Marketing here at BlueLink. This is the third session on the DSCSA webinar series. This session is being recorded, so I will email you all the information this afternoon, and you can also find the recordings from the previous sessions in that email as well. So for today's presenter, we have our very own Darren Meyer, who is the CTO of BlueLink and also the application architecture behind what's been going on with some of the pharmaceutical functionality. We also have Gary Lerner from Gateway Checker in this presentation as well. So we're going to go ahead and discuss more of what to expect from BlueLink in terms of some of the functionality for the upcoming DSCSA deadline. So with that, without further ado, Darren, I'll pass it off to you. And if anybody does have questions, your mics and cameras should be off, but you can just message the chat and I will go ahead and monitor them throughout today.
Sounds good. So welcome everyone. In our previous sessions that were run by Gary, one of the last things that he did is he kind of left us with some key things to know. Today we're going to be focusing on the product identifier. The PID stands for the product identifier, which is that barcode that includes the 4 data elements: your GTIN, your lot number, serial lot expiry, and serial number, and the drug transaction record, which is this piece of information, the EPCIS file that's being transmitted between each party. When you make your purchase from your supplier and it goes to you, you're getting sent a file, and then that file, when you ship to your customers, we're going to be generating a file like that. Today's session, we're going to focus on getting the information that you need in your BlueLink data file for that product identifier stuff to work, and we'll explain a little bit about the global location number and company prefix from GS1 that's required. In the next session that we're going to have in a couple weeks' time, we're going to be focusing more on the things that you're going to do in the BlueLink software when we get the later updates in terms of actual scanning of things coming into your building and leaving the building. So that's not part of today's session because there's enough stuff to cover just under the PID and DTR stuff. So without any further delay here, let's jump in. So, and BlueLink application features, in the version of the application that you have today, in all of your systems right now, you already on your inventory screen in the unit of measure section have the ability to enter your global trade identification numbers for each unit of measure. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about that. A lot of you in our current customer base are selling eaches only. You don't have interpacks or cases, but you are going to need to add the interpacks and cases for the purpose of scanning inbound and potentially outbound as well. So we'll talk a little bit about the details there. Some features that are coming to the software that have already been designed, they're in testing right now, and they'll be deployed to you as you receive your updates this year. Are new master data fields related to the GS1 company prefix and global location numbers. You're going to have a place to put the data that you're gathering from your suppliers, from your customers, from the manufacturers, and your own GLNs. You'll have a place to put that in the BlueLink software very soon, but you can start gathering that data now, and we'll talk a little bit more about that soon. In the session in a couple of weeks' time from now, we'll talk more about those new scanning screens that are coming for inbound and outbound. So let's start talking about the inventory master data. So one of the tasks that all of you need to start doing, if you haven't already, and in some cases you already have units of measure and just need the GTINs, understand that the scanning operations that you're going to be doing as products come into your warehouse and the scanning operations that you do on the way out are taking advantage of these 2D data matrix barcodes. And there's different barcodes on things like cases versus individual bottles. So down here we have a little photo that has a picture of a case. You can see there's that little 2D data matrix barcode right there. And then in there we have bottles inside that case, and that's kind of your each. So in this example, we have just 2 units of measure in each in a case. There's no interpacks. But in order for the scan of this 2D data matrix barcode to work for the case without you having to open that case, you have to have the GTIN in your BlueLink data system, in your BlueLink system, because we need something to match with. So we're going to try to find the right inventory item that's going to match it up with your purchase order, and it also allows us to match it against the data that's coming in. So What can I do in the immediate term? Well, if you haven't already started to gather G10s, one of the first things you could do is start emailing the manufacturers of those products. So it's not necessarily the supplier that you're buying from. So, I mean, while you could ask Amerisource, for example, for a list of G10s for the products you're purchasing, you may have better luck contacting the manufacturer of those items. If you need help contacting those manufacturers, let us know. We have some of these already. We have a list from Pfizer, for example, already. But one of the things you're going to want to do is ask them for a file that contains, the NDC 10, the NDC 11. Usually they automatically include both of those. Really, we just need the 10, the G10, the case G10, the case quantity. So you can see here, here's an email from Pfizer that has an Excel spreadsheet where they've included the case quantities, and they've defined, importantly, the quantity that's in each case. And this information is very important on the BlueLink side of things, because when you define units of measure in your BlueLink data file, you need to know how many. In some cases, some products also have inner packs, and those will just be additional columns in the spreadsheet. Now, once you've got that data, you can either work through it yourself and create those units of measure in your BlueLink app and add them on your own, or you can work with a BlueLink consultant. So here's an example of one of the items from the Pfizer spreadsheet and how it's been mapped to the screen in BlueLink. So you can see here, we've created a 48 unit per case unit of measure. The quantity is defined as 48, and you can see the G10s are different on these two products. I'm not sure how much time you spent looking at G10s, but what you'll notice is that there's a common part to the G10, which is the same unique identifier for the product, and then the first digit is what's different. So your 0 is typically in each. Sometimes the 1 is also considered in each, and then the manufacturer can pick any number they want from 2 to 9 to represent the case pack size. These case pack sizes should remain unique for the given quantity. Gary and I had fun at the DSCSA conference pinning some manufacturers down, just reminding them, don't change the pack quantity size with the same digit. Please only, if you're going to do a different pack size, maybe they're coming up with a pack of 36, they should be changing that first digit to a different number. In the BlueLink database, there is a unique index on this G10. So you can't have this same number on two different SKUs, and you can't have it on two different units of measure. So if you ever did find yourself in the situation where a manufacturer changes their pack size, where you would at some point have to just delete the G10 from one and put it on the other row. So just some things that we've learned over the last few weeks or months. So that's really the only thing that you have to do on the product side of things for the immediate term, is get your G10s, get your units of measure into your BlueLink data file. The next section that we're going to talk about are, in order to be able to generate those EPCIS files for your shipments down to your customers, and to recognize who the parties are on EPCIS files that are coming in from your suppliers, what you need are two pieces of information. So you need your customers and suppliers company prefixes and global location numbers. And this next section, we're going to dive into, what is that all about? So in one of the previous presentations, Gary showed us this DTR transaction summary. It's kind of the PDF human readable version of a transaction that's inbound. And you can see here, we've got things like the source owner, the ship from, we've got the destination owner, and the ship to. Each one of these things behind the scenes in the actual EPCIS file is actually represented by this company prefix and global location number. So it's going to be important for us to have what those company prefixes are for the various parties that are part of the transaction in your BlueLink data file, so we can match this stuff up. More important even still on the customer side of things. So as you go to ship to your customers, you're not going to be able to ship outbound to any customer unless they've provided you with the global location number of each ship to address that we're trying to deliver to. So the master data here that's required in the BlueLink is what's going to enable that file transmission. And there's a number of different screens in the BlueLink app where we're going to allow you in the next version to record this. Greg says he's not seeing screens. Is everybody else seeing screens? Gary, you see the screen? You do, right? Okay, not sure why. If ultimately, if he's
sure, you're making sure you're okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Other people are saying they are seeing them. So I mean, if somebody's not able to see it, they can ultimately look at the recording a little bit later.
Maybe down at the bottom, they have to hit the sync button.
Oh, possibly. Okay. All right. Well, hopefully, I'm going to keep going here. But so different screens that are coming in the Blue Link app, and at the very end of this presentation, you'll be able to see the previews of what these little changes are to the software. So let's kind of jump in here. So what's the action that you need to do for this GS1 company prefix and GLN? Well, the first thing you need to do is actually get one for yourself if you don't already have one. So it could be that if you're registered for the verification router service, the VRS that's used for serialization scanning inbound returns, you probably already have a GLN. So if you've forgotten what it is, you can just go to the search the GS1 database for your company name and retrieve what your GLN is that way. But if you're not already in the list, you don't have one yet, then what you're going to do is you're going to register for one. One of the next slides here includes information on where you go to do that. And you're going to purchase with a company prefix that has enough locations to cover all of your physical warehouses. I'll explain that in a bit more detail as well. You're then going to assign a location number to each warehouse that you have. So if you have more than one shipping facility, you're going to assign a different integer to each one of those, and then you'll do a calculated check digit. So let's dive into what the heck am I talking about here. So the first part, I said search the GS1 database. Again, everybody's going to get a copy of these slides, so you can visit these URLs a little bit later. But that's the URL for the GS1 search. You can also just Google the phrase GS1 GLN search, and I'm sure you'll be able to find this. But you can search by your country and the company name. Obviously, everybody's in the US here. And then if you're not already registered, there's the link that you can follow to actually register. And when you go to that link, what you're going to see is an option to choose, well, how many, in this case, these GS1 company prefixes were originally not for GLNs, but they were actually for issuing barcodes. So like if you were creating products and you were a manufacturer, you would need a company prefix to issue UPC codes. So in the wording that they have on their website, you'll see it says number of products needing a barcode. Well, for our purposes in pharma, for the purpose of ePICs, what the number of barcodes really means number of locations. We're talking about how many digits do you need at the end of your barcode to specify to cover all of the locations. Now, for most of you on this call, you probably need the least expensive one because it's going to give you up to 10 locations. If you happen to have more than 10 locations, you're going to have to move up a notch, and then you'll have 2 digits available for the location. So you can see your company prefix for GS1. The number of digits that you get assigned for the company prefix is up to 11 digits, where this last digit is going to be your location. If you purchase one level up, then you're going to have 2 digits available for your location, and your company prefix will only be 10 characters long. That's just how that works. So here's a sample of what a certificate might look like when you've actually purchased it from GS1. You're going to get a PDF file that looks just like this, and it's going to have your GS1 company prefix on one line. And then down at the bottom, you're going to see it, they call it legal entity global location number, and it's got the same prefix, same number at the beginning, and then they add a 0. So the 0 is intended to be your legal entity, your billing address one. And then there's always going to be a check digit at the end. So when you're trying to assign additional GLNs for other locations, you're going to have up to, you can make that number from 1 to 9, and you can change that number, and then you just go calculate a new check digit for yourself. Where do you do that? Well, you can go to the GS1 website, and they actually have a GS1 check digit calculator. And here you can just type in the number, and so in this example, I added a 1 to the last digit and then hit the little calculate button, and then it spits out, okay, number 2 is going to be your check digit for that. So your entire GLN for the first warehouse would be that number with the 2. If you change that number to a 2 and you hit calculate again, it's going to come up with a different number. So where in the BlueLink application are you going to put these things? Well, this is the change that's coming in the immediate term. So these changes are already made to our base app version of Pharma. It's going to start being rolled out over the next few months to all of you. So you will have a home to type this information in. In the meantime, though, you can at least start gathering it. Just keep it in a spreadsheet, for example, and you can start asking, get register for your own GLNs. Calculate your check digits, and then when you've got the updated version of the BlueLink software, you'll be able to put them in. So you're going to see screens like this one, where there's going to be a company prefix field and a global location number field. So, quick summary of action items here. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning, you've already got the version of the software that allows you to start recording G10s. Start getting that G10 data in now. If you need help on understanding how to set the units of measure up, do just reach out to the BlueLink help desk. We're happy to spend some time with you, show you the best practices for setting up those units of measure. Again, our recommendation is always to start with a number / the unit. So, 6 IP, for example, for interpack, or 32/CS for 32 per case. The reason we want to do that and not just use interpack or just use the word case is, again, because the manufacturers do, on a reasonably regular basis, change the packaging of their products. So something will in fact change from a case of 24 to a case of 32 at some point in time. And you want to be able to handle that in your BlueLink data file by being able to just put another row. You can't do that if you only call it case. If you call it case of 24, and then later on they come up with a case of 32, you can add case of 32 and put the different G10 on that line, and they can both coexist at the same time. So it's going to be important to set that up properly. Again, any questions, just reach out to the BlueLink team. We're happy to help you. If you get spreadsheets from your suppliers and you want help importing those spreadsheets so you don't have to key everything manually, again, just reach out to the BlueLink team. We're happy to help. Do send emails to your suppliers and customers asking them for their GS1 company prefix and GLN. Okay, so if you can start gathering that information now, sometimes there's delays in getting responses. You want to keep track of the list of who your suppliers are, keep track of whether you've got them. Same thing on the customer side, and especially the customer ship to side is going to be very important to have all that information. You're not going to be able to ship to customers for whom you don't have this information. Okay. Last kind of action item that you might want to consider doing is the other thing that takes some time to do is if you want to transmit outbound files to your customers or receive inbound files from your suppliers electronically, that's going to be done through an AS2 connection. Now, BlueLink doesn't provide those connections directly. That's why Gateway Checker's here. The Gateway Checker team can help you establish those AS2 data connections. Now, it can take several months to establish these connections. So we've seen certain suppliers where, from the point in time when you first start asking them from credentials, it seems to go fast at first, and then all of a sudden there's a 2-3 week delay before they run a test, and then they run a test, and then there's an issue with the test, so they need to redo something else. It can take 2-3 months, so you don't want to be doing that in the summer of 2023. You want to be establishing those connections kind of as soon as possible. Your BlueLink app doesn't need to be fully ready to electronically scan inbound receipts and send outbound things to have the connections in place. The connections can be in place and they can be sending you inbound files, and they can be gathering in the Gateway Checker system, and without you having to do the scan acknowledgement. The scan verification on the way in is only required by November 20th of 2023. You're not going to have to do that ahead of time. You will be able to do that if you happen to get an application update a little bit sooner, but you don't need to until that date. Likewise, on the way out, you could start establishing AS2 connections with your customers if you want to transmit the outbound files electronically through EDI AS2 connections. Now, you will have some other options in terms of how to transmit those files. You could potentially, for example, receive them, send them via email, or you could make them available via customer portal. So in the next session that we have on the BlueLink side of things, we're going to be reviewing a little bit more about what happens with inbound EPCIS files, how you're going to do the scan verification of the product that's inbound and the acceptance of those inbound shipments. And we're going to talk a bit more about, okay, well, what are you going to do in terms of scanning outbound product, and what are you allowed to scan? What happens when you scan a case versus an inter versus an each? We're going to talk a little bit about shipping containers as well. There's something called an SSCC that allows you to pack products into containers, and then you can print a special label on that container that helps the receiving party in one scan know everything that's inside that container. That gets bundled into this outbound EPCIS file that has aggregation information, says this container has these cases inside, which have these inners, which have these serial numbers. So these are the different methods. And again, we're going to get into more detail in the next session on that. So just to end the presentation off, give you a few more little glimpses into what's coming in the next application updates. So here's some other screens in the BlueLink app where you're going to be able to key in those global location numbers and GS1 company prefixes. So your customer screen is going to have it. Your ship to screen for each ship to is going to have it. Your vendor screen is going to have it. And so are things like your system master screen for your own company information is going to be there as well. And that's all we have for today's session. So thank you so much, everybody, for attending. If there's any other questions, feel free to ask them in the chat and I'll talk to them now. If you've got any questions for Gary, you can also reach out to him. He did put his email address in the meeting chat if you want to start establishing those connections. And hopefully everybody learned a little bit about the complexities of what the heck's this GS1 stuff and company prefixes and GLNs and all that other fun stuff.